The scent of bergamot and jasmine lingered in the air as I arranged the new collection of luxury perfumes, each crystal bottle catching the boutique's soft lighting. Like trapped stars, my fingers traced the delicate glass, muscle memory from years of handling these precious vessels, worth more than my monthly rent. I'm Sawyer, and after 8 years in the fragrance industry, I thought I knew every trick, every whispered secret that luxury retail could throw at me. I was wrong. Did you see the numbers from last quarter? Mia whispered, sliding next to me behind the counter. Her usually bright eyes were clouded with worry. Something's not adding up. Later, I murmured, noticing a familiar figure entering the store. Brandon strode in, his tailored suit, a perfect match for our upscale clientele. My boyfriend of 6 months, though sometimes it felt like 6 years, in both good and terrible ways. He wasn't alone. His mother, Victoria, swept in behind him, her Hermes scarf artfully draped, her presence immediately commanding attention. I watched her eyes scan our displays with the calculated precision of a sniper choosing targets. "Darling," Brandon called out, but before he could reach me, Victoria's manicured hand gripped his arm. "The new Maison Laurent display first, dear. Business before pleasure." I busied myself with inventory, keeping within earshot. Victoria's voice carried that particular tone she reserved for what she considered beneath her, which was most things, and definitely me. "The distribution rights are nearly secured," she was saying. "We simply need to ensure certain competitive elements are properly managed." Brandon's response was too low to hear, but Victoria's sharp laugh cut through the store's ambient music. "Sometimes, dear, success requires a firm hand. That's why I've arranged for Derek to handle the situation with their supply chain. A few strategic difficulties should suffice." My hands froze on the inventory tablet. Was she suggesting what I thought she was? "Mother, is that entirely necessary?" "Absolutely. We didn't build this empire by playing nice with the competition. Now, about that girl you're seeing." I forced myself to breathe normally, though my heart hammered against my ribs. The girl she was referring to was me, and the competition was my boutique's new exclusive perfume line. The one that had been experiencing mysterious shipping delays and quality control issues. "Sawyer's different," Brandon said, his voice finally carrying. "She understands business." "Does she?" Victoria's tone dripped with false concern. "Then she'll understand when her little perfume counter starts struggling. It's nothing personal, just business. Although, darling, you could do so much better than a shop girl." The tablet nearly slipped from my trembling fingers. 6 months of subtle undermining, of accidental slights, and backhanded compliments crystallized into perfect clarity. Every delayed shipment, every mysterious cancellation, it hadn't been bad luck. It had been Victoria, methodically destroying my career while smiling at me across family dinners. "Mother, please." Brandon's protest was weak, practiced, the same tone he'd used when she'd criticized my apartment, my clothes, my existence. "Hush now, Derek's already set things in motion. By next quarter, their entire line will be compromised. Such a shame, really. Quality control issues can be so devastating for luxury brands." I kept my face neutral as they approached the counter. Victoria's smile as practiced as her son's protests. She selected a perfume, one of ours, not the competitor's line she was secretly sabotaging. And I rang up the sale with steady hands that belied the rage building inside me. "Lovely to see you, Sawyer," she purred, signing the receipt. "You must join us for dinner this weekend. We have so much to discuss about your career prospects." I smiled back, a gesture that felt like shattered glass in my mouth. I wouldn't miss it for the world. As they left, Mia touched my arm. "You okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." "Not a ghost," I replied, watching Victoria's elegant retreat. "Just my future mother-in-law, plotting to destroy everything I've worked for." The crystal bottles gleamed around us, beautiful and fragile, like all the dreams Victoria was systematically shattering. But she'd made one crucial mistake. She'd underestimated exactly what this shop girl was capable of when pushed too far. The marble floors of Victoria's mansion echoed with the click of expensive heels and hollow laughter. I smoothed down my carefully chosen dress, the most expensive piece in my wardrobe, and tried to ignore how out of place I felt among the crystal chandeliers and oil paintings. "Just breathe," Brandon whispered, his hand warm against my lower back. "They're going to love you." I wanted to believe him, but the memory of Victoria's words at the boutique still burned in my mind. I forced a smile as we entered the dining room, where the family had gathered for their weekly dinner. "Sawyer, darling," Victoria's voice carried across the room like winter frost. "That dress is interesting. Vintage, I assume." Before I could respond, Lucas appeared at my side. "Good to finally meet Brandon's mystery woman," he said, offering me a glass of wine. Something in his eyes, a warning, perhaps, made me pause. "Mother's been talking about you non-stop." "All good things, I hope," I said, watching Victoria direct her assistant Derek to rearrange the seating cards. "Oh, always." Lucas's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Though I should warn you." "Lucas," Victoria cut in sharply, "help Derek with the arrangements. Sawyer dear, come sit by me. I want to hear all about your little shop." Brandon squeezed my hand before releasing me to my fate. I took my assigned seat, noting how Victoria had separated us, placing Brandon between his father James and Derek instead. "So," Victoria began, adjusting her pearl necklace, "Brandon tells me you're quite ambitious. Planning to climb the corporate ladder in retail, are we?" "I'm developing a new marketing strategy for our exclusive collections," I said, careful to keep my voice steady. "Our latest numbers show promising growth." "Numbers can be so deceiving," Victoria interrupted, signaling for wine. "Just ask Emma." Lucas's ex-wife had such grand plans for her design career. "Remind me, Lucas, what is she doing now?" Lucas's knuckles whitened around his fork. "Mother, working at some print shop, isn't it? Such a waste of potential. But that's what happens when people reach beyond their natural station." The threat in her words was clear as crystal. I glanced at Brandon, but he was suddenly very interested in his soup. "Speaking of potential," Victoria continued, "Brandon, darling, tell everyone about the new project you're heading. The one we discussed?" Brandon straightened. "Actually, I was thinking of taking a different direction with—" "Nonsense. We agreed the modern minimalist approach was best." "Sawyer, you'll have to excuse us. Business talk can be so tedious for outsiders." "Actually," I said, surprising myself, "I'd love to hear about it. The luxury market is all about understanding design trends." Victoria's smile tightened. "Dear, there's a vast difference between selling perfume and understanding true luxury. James, don't you agree?" James looked up from his plate, his eyes tired. "I find retail experience quite valuable, actually. Helps understand the end users." "James," one word from Victoria, and he fell silent. The rest of dinner passed in a blur of subtle jabs and pointed questions about my background, my family, my aspirations. Each response was met with Victoria's practiced smile and calculating eyes. As dessert arrived, Victoria turned to Derek. "Have you handled that supply chain issue we discussed?" "Yes, ma'am. The first complications should begin next week." My spoon clattered against the china. Brandon touched my knee under the table. A warning or comfort, I couldn't tell anymore. "Wonderful," Victoria purred. "Sometimes the market needs a gentle correction. Don't you agree, Sawyer?" I met her gaze across the table. "Actually, I believe in fair competition. It tends to reveal people's true nature." The room fell silent. Lucas coughed into his napkin, hiding what might have been a smile. "How naive," Victoria said softly. "Brandon, we really must discuss your future in the company, perhaps privately, after dinner." I watched Brandon nod, already defeated, and something inside me hardened. The woman across the table wasn't just trying to ruin my career. She was slowly suffocating her entire family with her control. "Excuse me," I said, standing. "I need some air." In the hallway, I caught my reflection in an antique mirror. My careful makeup, my expensive dress, my attempt to fit into Victoria's world. Behind me, Lucas appeared. She did the same thing to Emma, he said quietly. Broke her down piece by piece until there was nothing left. The question is, Sawyer, what are you going to do about it? I stared at my reflection, at the woman trying to play by Victoria's rules, and made a decision. It was time to change the game entirely. The numbers didn't lie. 3 weeks of meticulous tracking had revealed a pattern so obvious it made my hands shake as I spread the sales reports across my desk. Our exclusive perfume line wasn't just underperforming, it was being systematically destroyed. Look at these shipping manifests, Mia said, pointing to a series of dates. Every major delivery delayed or lost, right before peak sales periods. That's not coincidence. I traced the pattern with my finger, remembering Victoria's words about strategic difficulties. The evidence was there, hidden in plain sight, like poison in expensive wine. My phone buzzed, Brandon calling for the 3rd time today. I let it go to voicemail. You need to tell him, Mia said softly. Tell him what? That his mother is deliberately sabotaging my career, that she's probably breaking half a dozen laws. I laughed, but it came out hollow. He won't believe me. The boutique's door chimed. Lucas walked in, looking as out of place among the perfume displays as I had felt in his mother's mansion. We need to talk, he said, glancing at Mia. Privately, I led him to the back office, noting how he checked over his shoulder before closing the door. If Victoria sent you, she didn't, but she's planning something big. Derek's been making calls, pulling strings. Whatever's coming, it's worse than delayed shipments. My stomach clenched. Why are you telling me this? Because I watched her destroy Emma's career, her reputation, everything. He ran a hand through his hair. Emma was talented, determined, like you, and Victoria couldn't stand it. What happened? Suddenly, Emma's designs were being rejected, clients canceled. Her work was called derivative, unprofessional. Within 6 months, no design firm in the city would touch her. He met my eyes. Sound familiar? Before I could respond, my phone buzzed again. Brandon's face lit up the screen. You should answer it, Lucas said. He's been in meetings with Mother all morning. This time, I picked up. Brandon's voice came through strained, artificial. Can you meet me at the apartment? We need to discuss something. I found Brandon pacing our living room, Victoria's influence hanging in the air like expensive perfume gone sour. Mother thinks it's best if you step back from the luxury line, he said without preamble. Focus on the standard collections. She's concerned about your experience level. My experience level. The words tasted like ash. And what do you think? I think Mother knows the business better than... That's not what I asked. I stepped closer, searching his face for any trace of the man who'd once defended me. What do you think, Brandon? He wouldn't meet my eyes. There's an opening in the children's fragrance department. Mother says, stop. My voice cracked. Just stop. Sawyer, please. This is a good opportunity. Mother's trying to help. Help? I grabbed my laptop, pulling up the sales reports. Look at these numbers. Look at what she's doing to my business, my career. She's systematically destroying everything I've built. Brandon scanned the documents, his face paling. There must be some mistake. Mother wouldn't what? Manipulate? Destroy? Ask your brother about Emma. Ask your father about all the architects who mysteriously lost contracts after competing with your family's firm. His jaw tightened. You don't understand how things work in our world. Your world. I laughed bitterly. That's exactly what Victoria wants you to think. That there's your world and mine, and I'll never belong. If you'd just try to work with her, like you do, following her orders, watching her hurt people, and pretending it's all just business, the silence stretched between us like a chasm. Finally, Brandon spoke, his voice distant. Mother says either you accept the transfer or the boutique will face a full audit. Every transaction, every shipment, every decision you've made will be scrutinized. In that moment, I saw Brandon clearly for the first time. not as the man I loved, but as Victoria's carefully crafted puppet. The realization didn't hurt as much as I expected, maybe because part of me had always known. Tell Victoria she can audit whatever she wants, I said, gathering my things. And tell her to remember something. The thing about perfume is that even the sweetest scent can turn toxic when you push too far. I left Brandon standing in our apartment, surrounded by the fragments of what we'd once been. In my purse, my phone buzzed with a text from Lucas. Ready to fight back? For the first time since this began, I smiled. Victoria wanted to play with poison. Fine. But she was about to learn that some flowers bite back. The email arrived at exactly 9:47 a.m. Subject line: Career Opportunity, Maison Laurent. My fingers hovered over the keyboard as I read the offer 3 times. Global Marketing Director, complete creative control, double my current salary. My phone lit up with Mia's message. Did you get it too? I stared at the screen, remembering Victoria's words about competitive elements and proper management. The timing wasn't coincidental. The boutique's door chimed. Derek walked in, his usual pristine suit slightly rumpled, something uncertain in his typically composed demeanor. Miss Chen wants to see you, he said, using Victoria's preferred formal address. Regarding your future with the company. I bet she does. I held up my phone. Right after Maison Laurent's offer lands in my inbox, a flicker of something, guilt, fear, crossed his face. She only wants what's best for everyone involved. Does that include Emma? The name hit him like a physical blow. Yes, I know about her, about what Victoria did. Derek's carefully maintained facade cracked. You don't understand. Victoria, she keeps records. On everyone. Things that could destroy. He stopped abruptly, straightening his tie. Just come to the meeting. I found Victoria in her office, Brandon notably absent. She sat behind her massive desk like a queen on her throne, but something was different. The usual cold calculation in her eyes had been replaced by something harder, more desperate. Darling, let's discuss your options. She gestured to the chair across from her. I assume you've received Maison Laurent's offer. Did you arrange it? I merely suggested they might benefit from your unique perspective on our operations. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. Of course, accepting would mean ending your relationship with Brandon. We can't have family loyalty compromised by competitive interests. Is that what happened with Emma? Too much compromise? Victoria's fingers tightened on her pen. Emma made her choices, as did Lucas, eventually, as Brandon will. You mean as you forced them to choose? I protect this family, she leaned forward. Consider carefully, Sawyer. Some choices can't be unmade. My phone buzzed, Lucas calling. Victoria's eyes narrowed. Excuse me, I said, standing. I need to take this. In the hallway, Lucas's voice was urgent. Don't accept anything. Don't sign anything. Emma found something. Financial records, missing funds. Father's been helping us gather evidence. What kind of evidence? The kind that could end her. But she's making moves, fast ones. Whatever you do, don't. The call cut off abruptly. When I returned to Victoria's office, Brandon was there, looking pale and conflicted. Tell her, Victoria commanded. Brandon wouldn't meet my eyes. The board is conducting a full audit of your department. All sales records, client interactions, everything. Until it's complete, you're suspended. The pieces clicked into place. The offer, the audit, the timing. Victoria wasn't just trying to control me. She was eliminating evidence of her own manipulation. You can avoid all this unpleasantness, Victoria said softly. Accept Maison Laurent's offer. Leave the company. Leave Brandon. Leave this all behind, or stay and face what's coming. I looked at Brandon, searching for any sign of the man I'd fallen in love with. He stared at his shoes. If I leave, I said carefully, what happens to the audit? It becomes unnecessary. Victoria's smile was triumphant. Clean slate, fresh start, everyone wins. Everyone except Emma, and Lucas, and James. How many people have you given this choice to, Victoria? Mother knows what's best, Brandon said, automatically, but his voice wavered. I reached for my badge, watching Victoria's smile widen as I unpinned it. Then I placed it carefully on her desk. You're right about one thing, I said. Some choices can't be unmade. Keep the badge, I quit. Sawyer, please, Brandon started. Don't. I turned to Victoria. You wanted me gone? Congratulations. But remember, I'm not Emma, I'm not James, and I'm definitely not afraid of you. As I walked out, my phone buzzed with a text from Lucas. Got everything we need, ready to burn it all down? I smiled, thinking of Victoria's triumphant expression, of Brandon's weakness, of Emma's destroyed career. Sometimes the only way to fight fire was with an inferno. Ready, I typed back. Let it burn. The annual charity gala at Victoria's mansion felt like walking into a beautifully decorated trap. Crystal chandeliers threw diamonds of light across the gathering of city elites, all of them watching, whispering, waiting for the evening's entertainment. I wasn't supposed to be here. Victoria had made that clear when she'd rescinded my invitation. But Lucas's text had been urgent. She's planning something. Come tonight. I adjusted my black dress, borrowed from Mia, who'd insisted I looked like vengeance incarnate, and scanned the room. Victoria held court near the grand staircase, Brandon at her side like a well-trained show dog. The sight of him still hurt, but less than it should have. Quite the entrance, Emma said, appearing beside me with 2 champagne flutes, though I'd have chosen red. Nothing says, go to hell, quite like a power color. I took the offered glass, studying Lucas's ex-wife. Thanks for the files. They're enlightening. Just the tip of the iceberg. Emma's smile was sharp as broken glass. Watch Derek tonight. He's been drinking, and drinking men talk. Before I could respond, Victoria's voice cut through the murmur of conversation. Ladies and gentlemen, if I could have your attention. The room hushed. Victoria stood on the 3rd step, perfectly positioned to look down on everyone. Tonight, we celebrate not just charity, but family. Specifically, I'm thrilled to announce my son Brandon's engagement to Caroline Wheeler. The champagne flute nearly slipped from my fingers. A blonde woman I'd never seen stepped forward, taking Brandon's arm. He didn't look surprised. Of course not. They've been planning this for weeks, Emma whispered. Caroline's father owns the biggest luxury retail chain on the East Coast. The pieces clicked into place. Victoria's sudden urgency to force me out, the audit, everything. I wasn't just a threat to her control anymore. I was an obstacle to her expansion plans. Applause filled the room. Brandon finally met my eyes across the crowd, his expression unreadable. Then Victoria spoke again, her voice dripping with false concern. Oh, Sawyer dear, I didn't expect you tonight. How awkward. Security. Actually, James's quiet voice carried from the top of the stairs. She's here as my guest. The room went silent. Victoria's perfect mask slipped for just a moment, showing something ugly underneath. James, darling. And while we're making announcements, he continued, descending slowly. Perhaps we should discuss the real reason for tonight's gathering. The merger papers, Victoria. The ones you forged my signature on. Victoria's laugh was brittle. James, you're confused. Perhaps you've had too much. Show them, I said, loud enough to carry. Show them what your mother really is. Brandon stepped forward, confusion warring with anger. Sawyer, you need to leave. No, Brandon, you need to wake up. I pulled out my phone, connecting it to the mansion's multimedia system. Thank you, Mia, for that little hack. Everyone needs to wake up. The first image appeared on the massive screen behind Victoria. Financial documents, transfer records, emails, evidence of years of manipulation, forgery, and fraud. Turn that off, Victoria commanded. But her voice shook. Like you turned off Emma's career, Lucas emerged from the crowd, or tried to destroy Sawyer's, or buried those safety violations at the Peterson project, James added quietly. The ones that nearly killed 3 workers? Victoria's composure cracked. Everything I did was for this family, to protect us, to make us stronger, to control us, Brandon said suddenly, stepping away from Caroline. The look on his face, like someone waking from a long nightmare, made my heart twist. Security. Victoria's voice rose to a shriek. Remove them all. They won't come, Derek said from his corner, swirling his scotch. I gave them the night off. Seemed fitting, considering my resignation letter includes quite a few interesting details about certain irregular payments. Victoria turned to me, her elegant facade crumbling into something desperate and dangerous. You think you've won? You think exposing all this makes you righteous? You're just like me, manipulating, scheming, destroying what you can't control. No, I said quietly. I'm nothing like you, because I'm giving them all a choice. The one thing you never allowed. The room erupted into chaos. Phones recording, people talking, Brandon trying to reach me through the crowd. But I was already walking away, Emma and Lucas flanking me, James watching from the stairs with tears in his eyes. Behind us, Victoria's voice rose one last time. I made you all what you are. No, Mother, Brandon called back. You made us what you wanted. Now we get to choose who we become. Outside, the night air felt clean, free from the suffocating perfume of power and control. My phone buzzed, Mia, asking if it was done. It's done, I typed back, and it's only the beginning. The cafe where Emma suggested we meet looked nothing like the upscale establishments Victoria frequented. Cracked leather booths, coffee that tasted like memories of better days, and enough privacy for dangerous conversations. They're freezing my accounts, Emma said, without preamble, sliding a stack of papers across the table. All of them. Even the secret one I thought Victoria didn't know about. My hands shook as I read the documents. Bank statements, legal notices, a restraining order. How? She's thorough. Emma's laugh was hollow. But that's not the worst part. Look at the last page. It was a newspaper article, still warm from the printer. The headline made my stomach drop. Luxury boutique, chain faces investigation over fraudulent sales reports. My boutique, my voice sounded distant, even to myself. Every transaction you've handled in the past year is being scrutinized. Victoria's making it look like you've been cooking the books, creating a paper trail that leads right to you. The coffee turned bitter in my mouth. She can't. She already has. Emma's eyes were hard with experience. She did the same to me, remember. Only this time, she's learned from her mistakes. The evidence is perfect. My phone buzzed, Mia calling. When I answered, her voice was tight with panic. They're here, federal agents, auditors, everyone. They're seizing our records, our inventory. Don't say anything else, I cut in. Call a lawyer. After hanging up, I looked at Emma. How did she do it so fast? She's been planning this since you quit. Probably before. Emma pushed another document forward. Derek sent this before he disappeared. Apparently, he grew a conscience. The paper detailed every step of Victoria's plan. Not just to destroy my career, but to ensure I'd never work in luxury retail again. Every connection poisoned, every reference tainted, every opportunity blocked. There's more, Emma said quietly. James tried to help, to speak up about Victoria's manipulation. He had a stroke this morning. The world tilted sideways. James, the only one who'd shown me genuine kindness, who'd risked everything to help expose Victoria's corruption. He's stable, Emma continued, but Victoria's using it. Claiming the stress of your false accusations caused it. Brandon's with her, of course. They're holding a press conference this afternoon. My phone buzzed again. Lucas this time. Don't watch the news, he said without greeting. It's bad. I pulled up the live feed anyway. There was Victoria, perfectly composed in designer black, playing the role of the grieving wife. Brandon stood beside her, his face a mask of concern, as she described how a vindictive former employee had nearly destroyed their family. We trusted her. Victoria's voice broke perfectly on cue. Welcomed her into our home, our business, our hearts. And she repaid that trust with lies, manipulation, and fraud. Now my beloved husband. I switched it off, feeling sick. She's winning. She always wins, Emma said, then caught herself. I'm sorry, I didn't mean. No, you're right. I stared at the stack of documents, each one another nail in my professional coffin. Everything I tried to expose, she turned against me. Every piece of evidence, every ally, every plan. My phone kept buzzing. Reporters probably, wanting comments on the scandal. I turned it off. What are you going to do? Emma asked. Before I could answer, the cafe's door chimed. Two men in suits entered, scanning the room with practiced efficiency. Federal agents, Emma whispered. Back door, now. We slipped out just as they reached our table. In the alley behind the cafe, Emma grabbed my arm. My place isn't safe anymore. Victoria knows about it. Mine either, I laughed. And it sounded slightly hysterical. Nowhere is safe, is it? She's made sure of that. There might be one place, Emma hesitated, but it means trusting someone who hurt us both. Lucas, she nodded. He has evidence too, things even Victoria doesn't know about. But using it, there's no going back, for any of us. I thought of James in his hospital bed, of Mia facing federal agents, of Brandon standing by his mother's side while she destroyed another life. Of Victoria, always Victoria, spinning her web of control and destruction. Maybe that's the point, I said finally. No going back, only through. Emma's smile was sharp as broken glass. Then let's give her what she never expected. Victims who bite back. As we walked away from the cafe, I could almost smell Victoria's signature perfume in the air. Notes of power, control, and victory. But underneath, something else was growing, something darker, more dangerous, the scent of revenge. Lucas's private office felt like neutral ground in a war zone. The evidence we'd gathered lay spread across his desk. Financial records, emails, contracts marked with Victoria's elegant forgery of James's signature. Each document, another bullet in our arsenal. She's calling an emergency board meeting, Lucas said, loosening his tie. Tomorrow morning, she's going to pin everything on you and James. The stroke, the fraud, all of it. Perfect. I sorted through the papers, selecting specific ones. That's exactly what we need. Emma's phone buzzed. Brandon's asking questions. Says he found something in James's study that doesn't make sense. Let him ask. I checked my watch. Victoria's about to have bigger problems. The door opened. Derek slipped in, looking haunted. It's done. The offshore accounts are exposed. She'll know it was me. Are you ready for that? Lucas asked. Derek's laugh was bitter. She's been ready to sacrifice me for years. Might as well make it worth something. My phone lit up with Mia's message. Federal agents just left. They're heading to Victoria's office. Now. Places, everyone, I said softly. The show's about to start. We arrived at Victoria's office just as the agents did. Through the glass walls, I watched her perfect composure crack as they presented their warrants. Brandon stood frozen beside her desk, holding what I recognized as James's real signature on the merger documents. Mother, he said, his voice carrying through the door. What did you do? Victoria's eyes found me through the glass. For a moment, I saw real fear there. Come in, Sawyer, she called out, straightening her spine. Let's finish this little game of yours. The office felt colder than usual as we entered. Lucas, Emma, Derek, and me. Brandon stepped back, looking between us like he was seeing strangers. Quite the dramatic setup, Victoria said, but her hands trembled slightly. I assume you think you've won something here? No games, Victoria? I placed James's original documents on her desk. Just truth, finally. Truth? She laughed. The truth is, you're a vindictive little shop girl who couldn't handle rejection, who corrupted my son, turned my family against me. The truth, Lucas cut in, is in those offshore accounts you opened in Derek's name. The ones funding your corporate sabotage. And these emails, Emma added, laying down more papers. The ones ordering the destruction of competing businesses. My business. Victoria's smile turned sharp. Prove it. Prove any of it wasn't you, Sawyer. Your signatures are all over my signatures. I pulled out one final document. Like this one, the one where you ordered Derek to forge my handwriting on fraudulent sales reports. Derek stepped forward. I kept the original drafts, Victoria, all of them, including your instructions. The color drained from her face. Derek, after everything I've done for you, everything you've done to me, he corrected quietly. To all of us. Brandon picked up the documents, reading with increasing horror. The Peterson Project, those workers who were hurt, you knew about the safety violations. I protected this family. Victoria's voice rose. Everything I did was to build something lasting, something powerful, something controlled, I finished. But you forgot one thing, Victoria. Control isn't power. Trust is. The federal agents moved forward. Victoria's eyes darted between us, calculating, desperate. Brandon, she pleaded. You understand, don't you? Everything I did was for you, for your future. Brandon looked at the documents in his hands, then at me. Something shifted in his expression. Grief, understanding, resolve. No, Mother, he said softly. Everything you did was for yourself. As the agents began reading Victoria her rights, she locked eyes with me one last time. You think this is justice, she hissed. You're just like me, manipulating, destroying. No, I cut her off. I'm nothing like you, because I'm giving them all their freedom back, the one thing you never could. The agents led her away, her perfect facade crumbling with each step. The office fell silent, heavy with the weight of what had just happened. Brandon touched my arm. Sawyer, don't. I stepped back. This wasn't about us. It was about stopping her before she destroyed anyone else. As we left Victoria's empire of control and manipulation, I caught a whiff of her signature perfume. Notes of power and privilege, now tainted with the bitter scent of defeat. But underneath, something else was blooming. Something that smelled like freedom. Snow fell softly outside James's hospital room, muffling the world beyond the window. He looked smaller in the bed, but his eyes were clear as he watched the news coverage of Victoria's arrest playing on the muted television. You should have told me sooner, Brandon said from the doorway. He hadn't left his father's side since the truth came out. Would you have believed me? James's voice was gentle, free of accusation. Brandon's silence was answer enough. He turned to me, standing awkwardly in the corner. The board wants to meet with you about the boutique. I'm done with luxury retail, I said, surprising myself with how true it felt. Some prices are too high. Lucas appeared with Emma, their hands barely touching. A fragile reconnection born from shared battle scars. The prosecutors want statements from all of us, he said. They're building a solid case. It won't bring back what we lost. Emma replied softly. My phone buzzed. Mia, sending updates about the boutique's reopening under new management. Life moving forward, healing slowly, like James's recovering strength. A commotion in the hallway drew our attention. Victoria stood there, flanked by her lawyer and a police escort. Her designer outfit had been replaced by simple clothes. Her makeup stripped away, but her spine was still steel. 5 minutes, her lawyer said. That's all we negotiated. She entered the room like she still owned it, but her eyes betrayed her, darting between faces, searching for something. When they landed on James, something cracked in her perfect mask. I kept every letter, James said quietly. Every design you rejected, every project you sabotaged. 30 years of proof that I saw it all, but stayed to protect our sons. I built an empire, Victoria whispered. Everything I did was for control, Brandon finished. Not love, never love. Victoria turned to me, and I saw something I never expected, understanding. You were right, she said, about what it means to have power. I forgot somewhere along the way. No, I replied. You never knew in the first place. She straightened, gathering the remnants of her dignity. The funny thing about empires, she said, looking at each of us in turn, they're built on fear or trust. Fear is faster, easier. Trust. She glanced at Lucas and Emma's joined hands, at Brandon by his father's bed, at the family she'd tried to control instead of cherish. Trust is harder to build, but impossible to break completely. The police officer stepped forward. Time's up. As they led her away, she paused at the door. James, do you remember that little perfume shop in Paris? Before everything? A ghost of a smile touched James's lips. Where you said you'd rather have love than money. I meant it, then. She met my eyes one last time. Keep them honest, Sawyer. Someone has to. After she was gone, the room felt lighter, as if a shadow had lifted. But shadows leave marks, and some scars never fade completely. What now? Brandon asked, not quite looking at me. Now, I said. We learn how to live without her walls around us. Emma squeezed Lucas's hand. Together, James agreed, reaching for Brandon's hand. But differently, this time. I stepped toward the door, but Brandon's voice stopped me. Sawyer, wait, please. Some things can't be fixed, I said gently. But they can be rebuilt. If there's trust? He nodded, understanding what I couldn't say. We'd all been changed by Victoria's web of control. Victims and victimizers both. Healing would take time, and some bridges might never be fully repaired. Outside, the snow continued to fall, covering the city in clean white possibility. My phone buzzed with a message from Lily. She'd found a small storefront for rent, perfect for a new beginning. Not luxury retail, but something authentic, something built on trust. I thought of Victoria's words about empires, about fear and trust. She'd chosen her path, and we'd all paid the price. But standing there in the gentle snow, watching James's family slowly knit itself back together, I realized something important about revenge and justice, about power and control. Sometimes the greatest victory isn't in tearing down someone else's empire, but in building something new from the ruins, something stronger, truer, and finally, completely free.